Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on Condo Solutions, Monday mornings, 9 to 10 o'clock. We answer your questions about condos and HOAs, some of the rules, regulations, laws, and some of the things that affect you in your daily lives. It is a call-in show, so you can give us a call, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. We have a couple things we mention all the time on our call-ins. First of all, you don't have to give us your association name. We prefer you don't, only because there's a lot of associations out there that have similar problems. And sometimes if somebody hears another association, they might not think it applies to them. So we say, give us just the information that you have. You don't have to give us your real name, but you can if you want. We also ask that you provide us with some of the information that you have, and we'll do the best we can. But as we always say, we have to give you a radio answer, which means we don't have your documents. So if you've got something you got to go to court with, or may have to go to court with, you may want to give us a call later, or call Peter and set up a time to meet with him and go over and let him look at your documents, or discuss it with your own attorney. But anyway, that's the only caveats. But otherwise, everything else is free and clear, and we'll try to get you the best answer we can. My name is Mark Breckbill. I'm a local CPA and a licensed community association manager. And the one that most people call for is Peter Mullengarden. Peter's our attorney, and he has a gazillion years of experience doing this kind of work. And now we can even say he is an expert. Well, I don't know. The bar says he's an expert, but he's kind of good. So anyway, we'll go with that. He's at least kind of good. So, morning, Peter.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. So anyway, it's a good weekend. The Astros kind of are hanging in there, so that's always nice. And we've we had a fun weekend. I got to trick or treat, so kind of a little bit, but I'm waiting for the big day. I've got my yard decorated. I'm ready to go now, and so that's speaking of having yards decorated. See, that's why I can't live in an association, because they would never put up with my 12-foot ghost and my dragon, and the witch's cauldron, probably with them talking all the time, would probably cause a problem too. But anyway, let's get to our first caller. We have a caller. Connie, go ahead.
Oh, congratulations on being able to put up whatever you like in your yard.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Especially the witch's cauldron. I love it.
Yeah. That's my neighbors like it too. It's nice. I'm in downtown Stewart, so I don't have as much trouble with that. So, but anyway.
Well, I don't know why anybody would have any trouble with that, but okay, getting on to the moment. When an association uses the 60-day minimum time frame for the UPS, can the condo association require owners to request applications to run for the board via UPS in lieu of the condo owner simply notifying the association via mail? In other words, I live in a condo association. The requests for applications were only delivered to the people who live full-time here. The Northerners, if we found out that they were having an election, had to call and request. I was told, and I am on the board, so I'm on it again, but aside from that, I was told that it was they were doing me a favor by sending me the application. And they only sent it because I requested one.
All right. Connie? Hi, it's Peter.
Yes.
When you say application, you mean the first notice of
the board? Yes. And it's the only one that we get because the box was opened. We don't know who opened it. We don't know how many applications were in it. And they say that they had just enough people that ran, so that turned in applications, so there's no vote. And this has been going on for years. There's never a vote.
Okay. I seem to recall we had a similar conversation, I think, not too long ago.
Yes.
But it seems to me that, okay, first of all, if I'm not sure I quite understand what they're doing, but the first notice of the meeting, of the annual meeting and the election, which you're correct, must be sent at least 60 days in advance. That gets sent to everybody by law.
Well, it gets
So
sent to no one.
Well, okay, the first notice is basically, the first notice is the date and time of the annual meeting. It typically also has language in there saying that if you want to run for the board, you must submit your intent within 40 days, or not less than 40 days before the meeting. But that first notice is actually really important, and it must go out hand delivery, mail, or email, and only email to those who agree to get it by email, but hand delivery, mail, or email to every owner, period. It's not, it seems confusing to me, but it's not up to the owners to say, hey, are we having an annual meeting, and, you know, where do I send my application or whatever, or my intent to run? And the intent to run, by the way, can be anything. It doesn't have to be the form the association gives out. I can write on a napkin, you know, here's my intent to run for the board, and I hand it in, and that's my intent to run. So although many associations provide a form, you don't have to use the form, and the state recommends that those intents be hand delivered or sent by certified mail, because if it's hand delivered, the association must give a receipt for it, and if it's sent by certified mail, return receipt delivery, obviously there's a receipt. So that's why you can prove delivery.
Peter, when the 60-day notice goes out, it goes out to the address on record, not necessarily the unit, but the address on record for that unit.
Right, whoever the owner has told the association to use as their address.
Okay.
Okay.
And if the owner hasn't told them, then it's the unit address.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
It's 264 units. The only people who got notice that for an application were those who live here all the time. None of the northerners.
So how do they know there's an annual meeting, even or when it is?
We
the northern people
never know.
The northern people don't get any
read.
notice that. So if I understand this correctly, the people who are non-resident owners up north or wherever, they get zero notice that there's an annual meeting coming up in January or February or whenever it is.
No.
Wow.
And I called the office because I knew that what they were doing from people who live here. And I got a little note attached to the application that said, as you have heard, so-and-so has retired for health reasons. As a courtesy, we are sending you a form for the board. That was they telling me it's a courtesy.
Well, if that meeting got challenged, I mean, if what you're saying is accurate, and I'll assume that it is, if that meeting got challenged, they would have to they would have to do it over again. Okay, the state would rule that to be.
About that? Now, you know, we don't want to do. I don't want to pay a lawyer. You know, the few of us who are like outraged because none of us knew about it. We heard word of mouth because Northerners, we're close. You know, we look out for each other. We may live in different states, but we want to know what's going on. We pay the same HOAs that they pay down here. We are entitled to know everything that's going on, and we don't. And as far as, you know, who counts the ballots?
An impartial committee.
The box?
Okay.
You know, we had a little committee down here who live here that went in and said, oh, we'd like to be present when the box is open. And when they went in the afternoon, the president said, oh, yeah, it was already open. You know, so-and-so. We don't even know who opened the box or counted the ballots.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I mean, they're all over the place, but basically, I mean, and we've talked about this on the air before, but it's a good question. You know, there's the first notice, 60 day. We already talked about that. That gets sent to everybody. Then people turn in their intents to run. That has to be in by the 40th day. And then there's a second notice that goes out, which has the ballot with the alphabetical listing of all the
right.
candidates.
I know all that. I've read 7.
Okay, but the opening, and I'll get to that in a second. The opening of the ballots themselves. Who takes them out? Basically, what's happening is they're supposed to bring the receptacle to the meeting, to the annual meeting, and the committee appointed by the board, this impartial committee, at that point takes the ballots out, checks them in, make sure they're signed, and then the ballots are open and counted in front of the membership at the annual meeting by law.
Right. Well, see now, we don't run January, which we should, because there are more people that aren't here than are here. It's already a done deal, and our first meeting will be in December, and they will elect the same people to the board, because there aren't enough.
Connie, is this a condo or an HOA? Connie,
and there are 15 people on the board.
Connie, are you an HOA or are you an HOA or a
I'm assuming it's a condominium. It's a condominium, right?
Condo.
Okay.
It's a condo association.
I mean, if you feel, you'd have to outline exactly. You can read both 718, Section 112, Section 112,
right,
and the Florida Administrative Code, which goes into more detail on the election process, which is Florida Administrative Code 61B. It's 21.022, whatever. But if you feel that they haven't followed the procedure, then any owner can file a complaint with the Division of Florida Condominiums, Timeshares, and Mobile Homes, and they'll investigate the election process. And that has to be done.
Is that in Tallahassee, or is that?
Yes. Yeah. I believe there's a local office in Fort Lauderdale, and the main division is in Tallahassee.
Okay. So that's the Division of?
The Division of Florida Condominiums, Timeshares, and Mobile Homes. And it's a subdivision of the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation.
Okay.
And they have a website and phone numbers, but you have to make a written, basically, complaint.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess there's value in numbers, so we'll get a bunch of people to sign. One other question. Can a condo association purchase a foreclosure?
Generally speaking, yes. You mean a foreclosure? You mean when the association's foreclosing its own lien, or
No.
is it a bank foreclosure?
Bank foreclosure.
A bank foreclosure.
If it's
generally, generally, I'm not sure if they want to, but
no. Well, they have, and then they immediately sell it to one of the board members. Don't you just love it?
Yeah, they have the authority to buy units. The documents may have language in there specifically, though some documents say the association can't acquire units except through foreclosure of their own lien. So I've seen that. So you have to check out your own documents.
Okay.
But
he had a $30,000 offer more than what they bought it for.
Well,
and they didn't take it.
I'm sorry.
In general, you're not going to make money off of it necessarily if somebody pays more at the foreclosure than the person owes, then technically that money's going to go back to the homeowner. You don't get to, after all the fees and everything, the money goes back to the owner if there were more money in it. Now, typically that's not the case. Typically,
it's not the case.
By the
but
time
anyway, I was just wondering if the association is allowed to buy foreclosures, because
the statute says that they're allowed to acquire units. Okay, they're allowed to buy, sell, and even mortgage units.
Right.
That's in the Condo Act. Some documents themselves have restrictions on that, but you have to check your own documents.
From a practical standpoint, Connie, you would you would probably want
Board members individually can't do it, but the association can.
You'd probably want to have that authority, because there are times where you may need to buy out the first to get your money. If
Well, you know what?
but you're not supposed to be playing games with it.
Somebody offered to buy that particular condo. They were turned down, and then a couple of days, a week later, it was foreclosed on, and a real estate bought it and turned around and sold it to one of the members, one of the people that live here. Mm-hmm. It just seems to be an ongoing thing. They just...
Well, yes, I mean, look, if there's any kind of, I'm sorry, but if there's any kind of self-dealing or fraudulent activity or selling out, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. So, if people are using their position, I hate to say this, to line their own pockets.
Themselves.
Yeah, to enrich themselves at the expense of the association, that's a breach of fiduciary duty, and and so there's potential liability there. But
are there so many claims in Tallahassee, written claims or whatever, that it would take months or years to get to? I mean, how loaded are they with this kind of stuff?
They're loaded. I mean, they were super slow for a while. I've heard they've increased their staff, so supposedly they're a little better. But yeah, as some
we have a lot of documentation. So okay. So
they'll investigate it. They will. I mean, are they going to be super speedy? No.
Will it be in my lifetime?
Yeah, it'll be done in your lifetime. Yeah.
I'm a senior.
Yeah. Well, they're getting a little better. They were down to only like 2 arbitrators for the whole state, but I've heard they've increased their staff. So they'll get to it.
And this is one of the kind of things, election stuff and things like that.
That's right in their wheelhouse.
Yeah,
so.
they move pretty quickly on that, because they know, it takes a while to get all that done, and so they want to make sure that this doesn't go on and on and on. So
right. I mean, because this election, it was ridiculous. It's over already.
Yeah.
It's over. It's done. It's a done deal. It was printed out. Who got on to the board, and that's it. It's done. And we're not even out of October. We didn't have any kind of election.
Well, you can file your own petition for arbitration as well, with the state.
Okay.
So,
But the state will do that. Yeah. Thanks for calling, Connie.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Good luck.
Yeah, the state will move pretty quick on those kind of things. I mean, not speed of light, but they will move, and they'll do it. They'll do it for you, so you don't have to typically do it yourself. Pay for something. There's other situations where, you probably would be better off, hiring an attorney and going on your own, because they just don't necessarily move very quickly. But something pretty straightforward, like an election, where it's really it's a rules-oriented type process versus a facts and circumstances thing. Facts and circumstances take a while. They have to check it out. They have to get everybody's viewpoint. But if it's a violation of an election provision, like failing to mail a notice or whatever, that's pretty straightforward. If you can document that they didn't mail it or didn't mail a complete list, then they can move pretty quick on that. But they will. They don't like to invalidate elections, but they'll do it when the election hasn't been done correctly. So
no, I mean, there are some things in the election that are not fatal errors, and others that are. Okay, from what she was describing, what Connie was describing, is that failure to send out the 60-day notice to everybody, that would be a fatal error. Okay, not having your committee count the votes in front of the owners, and probably would also be a fatal error. Mm-hmm. Can't swear to that one, but definitely not sending out the 60-day notice to everyone would be.
Yeah, that's kind of straightforward and routine in terms of how it's supposed to be handled. The other thing is, it just amazes me that a lot of times you hear some of the stuff, and You don't hear this quite as much with associations that are managed by property managers. I mean, you hear other stuff, but a lot of times for some reason or another, and I was talking to somebody the other day in the industry, and they were saying the same thing, that more and more as things people just think that they don't have to pay attention to the rules anymore. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that. We're not following that rule, and it's unfortunate. But it's becoming very difficult in the condominium and homeowners communities, where you get new people that come in and they just don't understand why the rules are there, and they don't think they apply to them. And so from a practical standpoint, they end up just kind of ignoring what the rules are, or ignoring that the rules are in place, and just want to do what they want to do, and it makes it difficult. Like I say, in the associations that are managed by property managers, licensed property managers, a lot more times you don't have that problem, because those property managers are subject to their own personal problems and sanctions. So it's they try to avoid that. We have another caller. Jim, go ahead.
Hey guys.
Hey.
First of all, we live in an association. There's basically 80 units here, 80
Okay.
little houses. We're not an HOA. We are under the 617 statute. Third of the people who live here all the time. A third of the people are renters, and a third of them are owners of snowbirds. We've been having a problem with the VRB or whatever that is, and Airbnb people coming in here for 2 or 3 nights and then leaving. They're using our amenities and making a mess out of it. Is there any way we could stop them from using our amenities and not get in trouble with that?
Well, let me ask you this, Jim. You said you're
not an HOA. Yeah, I'm
You're
sorry.
not-
Go ahead.
We're not an HOA, Peter. We're 617 non-for-profit.
well.
So, what kind of governing documents do you have, if any?
Yeah.
We have our articles didn't address this at all, because we're incorporated in 69 and 70. And there was no any Airbnb people here. There was not a problem up till about 3 years ago, until when they started.
No, I understand, Jim. I mean, so you don't have a declaration of covenants then?
No,
and
we don't.
And the amenities are owned by the corporation.
By us, by the corporation. We don't have many. We have a boat. We're out on the island. We have a boat ramp. We have a little picnic area, and we own some beachfront up there, which is gated in. And there's a little chickie hut up there and some picnic tables. That's where the problem lies. The people are over the overnighters, the weekend people are going up there and having beer parties and whatnot, which is fine, but the people who live here can't get to use that because they're Airbnb people at times.
I mean, do you have mandatory assessments that people pay to maintain these things?
Yes, we do. It's very, very inexpensive, and all we pay for is the board of directors insurance and some electricity, and it's very, very, very inexpensive. Around $100 a unit a year.
Okay. Does the board have any rulemaking authority under these documents?
We have rulemaking authority. Yes, we do. The board,
is it only over the common area, or is there any rulemaking authority over the use of your lot? I mean, I'm asking you all these questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might be put you on the spot here.
The board has no authority over individual houses. I could put the Halloween decorations out. There's none of that. None of that. It's just the authority on the common property.
Okay, that's where the rub's going to come. Okay.
Right.
Where the rub is, if the board doesn't have any authority to, regulate the use of the lots per se,
right.
You can
we don't.
You can paint your house. You can paint your house whatever you want. You can do this. You can do that. And the only thing you do is keep in operation, I guess, the
mowing of the grass and so forth.
Right. Then honestly, it's going to be, without amending those documents, perhaps, maybe to give the board some, I haven't read them, to give the board some kind of rulemaking authority or something with respect to the individual lots, other than potentially seeing if this kind of use is in violation of local zoning ordinances, because but the Airbnb
Yeah,
fights
yeah.
like hell. Airbnb fights like hell against cities and counties and stuff like that.
Yes,
Um,
this does not bother me at all. I'm on the board here, and 3 or 4 board members do not like it at all, and they're up in arms. They're going to try to fight this. I don't know how we can fight it. To be honest with you, we have renters that are here for they live here, they vote here, their driver's license is on their house here. We can't let them in and not let the Airbnb people in. I don't see how we can do that.
I'm not sure how, honestly, just from what you've described the last few minutes.
I know.
Description of your documents. I don't know. You sound like you really don't have any firepower to use, quite frankly.
I don't think we do. I don't think we do either, Peter. But I just wanted to check with you guys.
When Jim, when an owner sells their house,
yes.
What do they get? They get their deed, and then is there any kind of stock certificate they get? What do they get to show that?
We got it. Yes. There is a certificate, an association certificate. You're in the association. Now, if you don't pay your dues by a certain period, there's a fine. If you don't pay your dues by a year or whatever it is, then you lose your membership here, and it costs a few $1,000s to get back in if you let it run out. Now, there are a few homes here that are not in the association. I think there's 3 or 4 homes that don't want to have any part of it. They don't go to the beach, they don't use the boat ramp, and they don't care. So they're not in the association.
So it's more like a voluntary association.
Yeah, that's what I was
It is. Exactly, it is. It is a voluntary. It's not mandatory. You do not.
In my community, honestly, where I live, it's the same thing. Okay, you can belong, and if you belong, you pay. It's really not even a stock certificate. It's just that if you want to pay a voluntary contribution, they'll maintain the boat ramp and the little dock that they have. And that's it for like where I live, and plus like 2 little green areas. But yours sounds similar, quite frankly.
Yes.
Not the same. Not the same, but similar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you can do. I mean, honestly,
I don't think we can do anything. To be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll tell you what. The board. I'm on the board, and the board. There's only 7 people on the board. We're a small community. A meeting ago in September, the board, right out of left field, made a motion to, I'm not going to give you the correct wording, but to exclude anybody from using the common area unless an owner was present with them. And obviously that won't work with Airbnb. And then they thought about it. And we didn't enforce it because we have to go to the membership to make we can make the rule, but we can't enforce it. Whatever the enforcement is, that has to be voted on by the membership. Whether you're going to kick out of the community or a fine or whatever that is, that has to be voted on by the
now, Jim. You know what?
By the members, but then they decided not to enforce. They said, "Well, we're going to table this. We're going to table it," because I think they were thinking, "Well, Airbnb's got a lot of money, and this is the time of year. All these homes in here are rented out for the prime time coming up, and they're thinking about they're going to get in trouble." By Airbnb.
You know, Jim, what you could do, I think, is first of all, you could put some sort of restrictive access, either a pass, something that could be that you would have to get in. And
you have to have a key to get into the beach area.
Okay, so
that's the main sticking point. The boat ramp isn't that big deal. People come in with their kayaks and put them in, and it's really not a big problem. But it's the beach area,
right?
With the tiki hut.
Yeah. So what you would do is if that's a key type situation,
it is.
What you might want to do is have a thing where that they have to be adjusted or activated, and where instead of a key, it's a code, and the codes change. And then you could make it so that the Airbnb people would have to apply for those codes. And so if you've got somebody who's renting a place for a long period of time, you want them to have access as long as they follow the rules. But if you got somebody that's coming in for a weekend and, they're trashing the place and leaving and there's no way to control that.
Yes.
What you would do is switch out those codes on the locks so that, and nowadays with the way they do things, it could be as easy as as changing a code on the thing. And so, and people would have
but
to,
Mark, we don't know when these people are coming in. We don't know when they come, when they go.
well,
They
that's
just
the
come in
point. That's the point, that they would have to notify you, because if they want access to that, they're going to have to get a new code from you. The owner
got
of the
ya.
unit is not going to have the current code. In other words, those codes are going to rotate.
Yep.
You can have something for permanent residents. They might have a different access system, but all you would do is, and it's not to keep them out necessarily, but it's to make sure that whoever's going to use the facility knows currently what the requirements are, and knows what the restrictions are, and frankly, it probably will keep out the Airbnb, because they won't want to go through the process. If they have to get that code to get in when they get there, and then
but Mark, they come here for the beach. They're here for the beach. We're on the island. They come here they're not coming here to hang around. They're coming here to go to the beach and sit in that cheeky hut and use it.
Well, you're trying to keep them off the beach.
I'm trying to keep them off.
They,
what I'm saying is that if they can't,
they don't have access.
They wouldn't have access. They wouldn't have an access code. In other words,
we can do that.
Sure, it's your property. It's your property. You can put whatever kind of restriction. If it's your property, you're not an association.
We can't say we can't discriminate between a 2-year renter or a 2-night renter.
You're not. All you're doing is having specific rules, and any person, now not a unit, because you're not not a unit, but any person that wants to have access to that, they have to get a code from. They have to get a code from from somebody at the corporation.
Somebody who's gonna, yep.
So why couldn't they just get the code, Mark?
Why couldn't they? They could, but they'll have to, if they have to apply for it. It may take a day or two to get it. See what I'm saying? So if those codes are changing every now and then.
To me, but wait a second. But if I own a home there, if I own a home there, whether I'm renting it long term or short term, I just make sure that I constantly contact whoever it is to get those codes, and then I give those codes. Then I give those codes to my tenant. Okay, you're making it a little more difficult. I understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're trying to rotate those codes. But then you have to change the codes all the time. And who's going to do that?
All the time.
Well,
somebody to do that.
All you do is, if you've got one of those new locks that have the codes, you've got gazillions of codes you can have. So what you end up doing is you end up giving a person a code. But
that's a real pain to all the owners, and now you have to tell all your owners to use codes constantly.
That's right. If they want to, but I guess it's a question of,
and it's going to be a large expense to have some security company come in and do this. That's not going to be cheap.
Well, the security, you don't need.
I think there's, I understand what you're saying, but it might be difficult for this community.
Yeah,
it would be very difficult in this community. We have trouble getting people to run for the board, none less somebody switching out codes every other day.
Well,
but that's an idea. It's a definite viable idea.
Especially if you're starting to have vandalism and things like that. At that point, and again, it's it's a question of it would be tough. Because you may have to be switching those codes on a regular basis, but a lot of the people that are doing the Airbnb, they don't want to get that actively involved in stuff. They don't want to even have to contact somebody.
They don't even come here. The owners don't come here. They have a cleaning service. They live, I don't know, in Fort Lauderdale or something, and
they live wherever.
They live wherever. Yeah, they don't even. Right across the street from me is Airbnb. I've never seen the owner in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I would try to find some kind of, at least it may not be perfect, but something that is not very expensive, but less, more restrictive in terms of access. It does cause a little bit of an issue, but if you've got a year-round resident, all they may have to do is call and say, I'm activating my code again. Maybe what they have to do is go down in there and use it again. That's how they do it, and like I say, I've done this on my units in condos and HOAs, and where I put one of those locks on, and I can give a separate code to a realtor, and then I can get rid of that code later. I can give I can create my own codes, but I can have multiple.
But you got to have somebody. So you need somebody be the keeper of the codes.
Well, but here's the thing. Yes, you do, and you don't have to change them all the time. But here's the other side of it. If they have to have a code, you'll have a record of who went in.
Yeah, definitely.
And if the place got trashed, you'll know who was there when it got trashed.
There's very little being trashed. There's just the
you don't like get the constant changeover, all the different people.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't like the constant changeover of strangers and new people and people doing.
The older people going up to the beach feeling comfortable with a gang of 4 couples up there, not breaking any rules, but having a little beer party.
Right.
No, the Airbnb people are coming here for a good time.
Yeah.
So
well, that's exactly. They don't care. They're here on vacation.
They're partying.
They're here for 3 days.
Yeah, they're on
moving
vacation.
on.
They're partying. No, I get it. This is the problem with Airbnb everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the state of Florida embrace? Does the state of Florida embrace Airbnb?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah. When you say embrace, I mean the one court last year held that it was a court of appeal said that's a residential use. Okay.
I read that.
It's not a commercial.
Paper, yeah.
It's not a commercial use. It's a residential use.
Residential use. I read that in the paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Because they eat there, sleep there, and whatever there.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even though it's just for 2 days or 2 nights or whatever it is, I don't agree with it, but that's the court. The problem is Airbnb. Because I've gone to some seminars on it, and they're very, very, very well funded. Okay.
Yeah,
They're very litigious. All right.
And so is
when the cities and the counties start cracking down on them because the use of the units are in violation of local zoning ordinances or this ordinance or that ordinance, Airbnb fights like you know what.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the cities and the counties usually end up settling because it's so expensive.
So expensive.
To fight
like
these
that.
guys.
Vacation Rentals by Owner, VRBO, or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm. Same thing.
They had their insignia on the middle of the field of the last year's Fiesta Bowl. They got plenty of money.
Yeah, right.
Look, there was legislation last year. It didn't get through to basically say that all these things are legal and you can't stop them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they have well-funded lobbyists too, I guess, right? So.
Sure.
I'm not saying that they're evil empire or Darth Vader stuff, but they're a powerful group.
We had a bunch of rundown homes in here, and then people from out of town are buying these rundown homes and fixing them up. That's one good
fixing
thing
them up and
about
renting them,
fixing them up, making them nice, put shrubs and palm trees and everything else, making the property look good, and renting them out.
Well, let's face it. This is kind of the wave of the future that we see in almost lots of industries. Your Airbnbs are now, not taking over, but they're cutting heavy into the hotel motel business, right? And what's happened to the cab industry? Cab industry now is Uber and Lyft and all that stuff. We have this self entrepreneurial thing taking over former industries. Whatever. I'm not here to give you a big lecture about the future of the world. I'm just saying, your community. Under your documents, absent, what Mark gave a good idea. He's trying to throw roadblocks or logs in front of them to make it more difficult. Yes. Okay, but legally speaking, to quote, stop it, it's going to be real tough.
It'll be real tough. Yeah.
And you know what you got? The other problem that comes in on these in regulating these things, Jim, and this is the trouble that the state has, is that the regulations that you would put on it, limiting the number of people, limiting the limiting it being more than one family or whatever, are some of the same restrictions that they're trying to put on to these sober homes. And of course, that's healthcare violations there. So now you get into kind of things, they get into some issues there. So it's been very difficult to regulate this stuff. And there's a demand for it.
Yeah, what the state and counties would have to do to make it very expensive for you to operate these places. Okay.
Yeah.
Make them put fire sprinklers in every room. Make them upgrade their homes to certain types of, construction and things because they're using as hotels.
They're all supposed to kick back to the Airbnb, the corporation, and be licensed and so forth and so on.
Right. They're also supposed to pay Department of Revenue because they're supposed to pay taxes.
Sure.
Are they doing that? Who knows? Probably not.
Who knows? Who knows if any? Well, we're in St. Lucie County. I'm sure no money's going down there. Not very little.
Yeah.
But
All right, guys.
I mean,
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. By the way, Jim,
All right.
stay on afterwards
Good
so I can
luck.
get your number there. That sounds like I got an Airbnb location I can add to my,
Wise
to my
guy,
rentals.
wise guy. I'll give you the name of the
You don't want
him.
Thanks,
don't
Jim.
want
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Take it easy.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Appreciate the help.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's got to be, and I'll tell you that it's kind of weird, but
It's not hopeless, but for his community, it's going to be difficult because they don't have a documentary
yeah, it's very
way
difficult
to stop it.
to go after, and we don't hear many voluntary associations anymore. There are a few around still, but and I was surprised. I know your community is pretty. Generally, the community itself is relatively restrictive. I didn't realize you guys are kind of a voluntary.
Well, probably because my community, I live, in this country club community, though I'm not a member of the club, so it's not a club community in that sense. But it's built in the 50s.
Yeah.
So it's built in the late 50s, and I think they finished in the 60 something. So I think at one time, they do have this declaration, and you have some covenants, but I think it probably expired through Marketable Record Title Act issues, and now it's more like voluntary. So you do see these voluntary associations, but yeah, they're pretty rare. It's usually just older communities that came up, before we had the HOAs becoming mandatory through site plans and things like that.
Yeah.
Where the counties would mandate, this community must be built with an HOA in order to maintain the stormwater drainage pond and the roads and whatever, green space.
It's interesting, Peter. I think that this Airbnb and the home rental concept is certainly going to be more and more prevalent. I mean, I think part of it is, frankly, is just that the units themselves. I'm seeing there's more and more rentals out there anyway, just general rentals. People don't want to own as many homes other than investors. It's the younger people are reluctant to buy, but at the same time, the unit sizes are changing. Things are changing a little bit in terms of what people are looking for, particularly in and around cities or resort areas, because everything's so expensive, and you start looking at some of these things, and it makes sense to be able to use them for, you got a lot more transient rentals than the days when you had somebody came in and moved in and bought, or moved in and rented for 15 years. It's not happening as much. It's a lot of people that are working, younger people coming and going in some of the communities. So it's kind of a mix. There's just so many things. You do have some retirees that have come down and they've sold their house. They don't want to buy another house, but many of them are gone for periods of time during the year, and for them to be able to make a little money if they own, that's, or people that are moving out of the area or whatever, and they don't want to sell their house right now, or so I don't know. And you get a place here, you can make a ton of money on Airbnbs. I mean, we have seasonal.
You're just getting value out of your property, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and like you said, those people are supposed to be paying taxes. They're supposed to be paying sales tax. They're supposed to be paying the bed tax. There's a whole bunch of taxes. I mean, it's that they're supposed to be collecting and paying, and I think that's where we're going to see some. I think that's where we're going to start seeing some tightening up or lessening, because when some of these people start going through the process of having to go through and collect all of their taxes and pay in all their taxes and do their sales tax, and keep track of all of that, it's going to be, maybe more administrative than they want. And I think a lot of this stuff still is not being reported to the extent that it should be. There's still some under the table money that's going through, some cash money that's not being paid and that kind of thing. So, it's short-term rentals are very difficult, and they're very difficult on the communities, but it's hard to keep them under control. But then there's such a demand for it, and I don't know, it's very difficult. I did want to, like I said before, I was talking to somebody, and the big problem you got right now is it's funny that we started talking about the Airbnb, because this is one of the things that's causing a lot of problems in associations. Is some of these beach associations, they're that are on the island and they're on the ocean. There's huge demand for those, but not necessarily for 3 or 4 months at a time. People want them for 2 weeks or or a month at a max, right? And a lot of the associations out there have restrictions on the units. They can be only rented 4 times a year or whatever, or in general can only have to be rented for 30 days or more or whatever. You can't rent them for short term. And what's happening is these people are just ignoring them. They're just ignoring it. They're saying that they're relatives or friends or whatever. And they're letting them in, and then by the time the association deals with it, the person is gone, and they're out of there. And so now there's nobody to go after, and so they're evicted. So what's happening is they're trying to get them evicted under the eviction proceedings because they're not authorized to lease for that kind of term. What kind of things could they do, Peter, to penalize the owner? I mean, let's say you got an owner that leases it, that does Airbnb, and they lease it out for a weekend or a week, and they collect their money, and the association finds out, and they try to get the person out, and the person refuses to go, or they don't kick them out. I mean, they can't physically have them arrested, right?
No.
So how do you handle that? And can you then fine the owner? I guess you can fine the owner for
No, you can. I mean, I'm assuming that these documents. I know we only have a few minutes, but I'm assuming that these documents for this type of community would have some leasing restrictions about you can't lease the unit for more than X times during the year, or you can't lease it for a term of less than whatever. Okay, and the short-term rentals violates those restrictions because the renter is in and out so quickly. You're really not going to have an opportunity to say, move for an eviction or something, sue to get rid of that, because by the time you move, they're gone.
Right.
So it seems like the only real, and you could fine the owner, okay? I mean, for violating the leasing restrictions, and fining has its own limitations, especially in a condo. You can't lien for the fine, right? In HOA, you can lien for a fine, but your documents have to allow you to, and the fine has to be at least $1,000 to lien for it. So typically, I think your probably most effective remedy is going to be some sort of action seeking injunctive relief to enjoin any further violations of the leasing restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of you can't continue to do short-term rentals, and if you win and then they do, then they're in contempt, and that you can get some harsher things by the court handed down for violating the court order. That injunctive relief. So to me, I don't think all is lost as long as you can. Big problem here sometimes is proof. Okay, if they have an ad on the Airbnb website platform, or the other one, VRBO, you can again show that they're advertising in here. Because sometimes what they'll say is, oh, these aren't short-term rentals. It's my cousin. It's my uncle. It's my niece.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And then depending on your guest restrictions, but long story short, I still think I have one association currently engaged in an action. I still think you can, use, again, either arbitration or court, depending on what kind of association it is, to seek, like I said, permanently enjoining violating, because those restrictions are still legal. I mean, it is legal, assuming your documents are properly written or properly amended, to restrict, leasing in terms of frequency and duration and term. And so, there's the fining and this and that, but at the end of the day, I think, getting that order is the most effective remedy. It's also the most expensive. I agree. I mean, I admit, but I think it's in the long term, it's probably going to be the most effective.
Yeah. And I do know that a lot of associations, most associations have some sort of a process where if you've got a tenant, you have to get them approved. You have
to get approved, right? That's another thing. Normally, they're not approved, right? They don't submit applications for these people. So I'm just saying they're in violation of the leasing, procedures.
Right.
Whether it's the application, the approval process, plus the length of term. Now I know, again, we're running out of time here a little bit. I know that there's some school of thought is make it more expensive on the owner to do it. In your documents, amend them to require that they put sprinklers in, they put this in, they put that in if they want to do these kind of rentals. Yeah, that's one school of thought. Also, just to kind of with your idea with the changing the code, put roadblocks out, to make it more expensive for them to do this. I tend to like the idea of, let's go after them. You have to prove it, like anything else, but go after them for violating your leasing restrictions, the approval process, what I said before.
Well, I learned at a very early age that it's effective to change the locks, because my parents were changing the locks on my door all the time. I could never get in. I don't know why that was.
Did your parents move and not tell you? And then
Yes.
you came home.
And then,
Hey.
and then the locks wouldn't work. That's exactly what happened. So,
Where are they?
Where are they? But oh, okay. They'll probably be back. But anyway, so no, it's tough. We interesting issues, and that's the kind of thing that we like to talk about on the show, and we love to have your participation out there. Those were great calls for Connie and Jim today. We love that kind of thing because they are different, and even though they're problems that everybody's dealing with to some degree, have their little twists. And Jim's with the voluntary association was kind of interesting. So hopefully you'll join us every Monday from 9 to 10 o'clock. Let your friends know that we're here, and call in, and we'll try to help out the best we can. And we appreciate everything that you guys do out there in your communities. Thanks for joining us here on WSTU Digital 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station.